Hey guys, welcome to Boxing Squared for boxing news and views from around the internet. The WBA and the Ring have recognised Oleksandr Usyk's effort in latest rankings and other information posted by them. And Anthony Joshua, well, he is sliding down. So we'll start with the WBA first, and here is the latest rankings, which obviously Usyk's not in because he's the champion, but he has been recognised by the sanctioning body as the WBA Boxer of the Month, and that's for the month of September 2021. So it says the WBA released its rankings for the month of September and also the monthly awards, with Oleksandr Usyk as Boxer of the Month. Usyk was undoubtedly the most outstanding fighter of the ninth month of the year, as he scored a giant victory over the hitherto unified heavyweight champion Anthony Joshua. Really jazzing up the language there. Anyway, so getting back to the WBA rankings, so we can find Anthony Joshua in the latest version down at number 5. So first time that he's been back in the rankings, for the best part of 2 years. So after he won against Andy Ruiz Jr. in the rematch at the end of 2019, left the rankings and obviously was the champion. So starts here at number 5 after his loss to Oleksandr Usyk, and he will now start preparing at some point for a rematch, potentially in early 2022. Date, venue, all that sort of stuff still to be confirmed. But we'll go through the rest of the rankings because there's some interesting things that I wanted to just touch on. And then on to the Ring, which has Usyk sort of climbing up its rankings and its pound-for-pound list. But in terms of the top 3, so the same as last month, Daniel Dubois, also number 2, Michael Hunter, number 3, Robert Helenius. So Daniel Dubois is not the interim champion because they've got rid of those, but as a result of that, he is the number 1 ranked fighter in the top 15. So they've done away with the interim champion. They do say elsewhere, and this is where it becomes quite interesting, because this press release here, the World Boxing Association reiterates the reduction of titles as announced a few weeks ago. For this reason, all interim titles have been eliminated. The gold titles are now ranked in the 2nd position of our ranking, and several eliminator fights have been announced. Therefore, we want to clarify that even if bouts are promoted as interim titles, they do not have the approval of our championship committee. But getting back to the gold champion is now in the 2nd position of the rankings. Not quite the case here at heavyweight, is it? So Robert Helenius is number 3. Michael Hunter, for some reason, and it has been not explained by the WBA, number 2 there. So this minor title that he does hold, he picked that up in that fight against Mike Wilson, and that is the Continental Americas belt. So for whatever reason, he is sort of in prime position for something. It's hard to know exactly what's going to be happening. Potentially a box-off, or potentially Daniel Dubois, who is the OC being the official challenger, because he was the interim holder prior to that. Daniel Dubois could end up facing Trevor Bryan for Bryan's regular title, which they don't call it the regular title, they just say it's the world champion, with Oleksandr Usyk the super champion. Anyway, so if we continue here, so that's just interesting and a by-the-by thing. Obviously, Robert Helenius, soon to face Adam Kovnatsky, beat him in 2020. Number 4, though, Hughie Fury. So you might recall a month ago, in the original version of the rankings, he wasn't there, but then it was announced that he was having a fight against Christian Hammer. Out of nowhere, he pops into the rankings at number 5. So he's up a spot this month, and that's courtesy of Usyk going out, because Usyk had been at number 4. Usyk the champion now, and Anthony Joshua takes that 5th spot that Hughie Fury was previously holding. It's funny when a fight gets announced and confirmed and they want some trinket on the line, all of a sudden that a boxer like Hughie Fury can be inserted so highly. But not too much else that's changed in the rankings for this month. We've still got Luis Ortiz, Andy Ruiz Jr., and yes, Mark Demorian, if you hadn't caught up with that. He just randomly inserted a month or 2 ago into the rankings. For what purpose? Well, he's going to be fed to someone. Who that is, Well, I would hazard a guess it's going to be Michael Hunter, potentially. Maybe Trevor Bryan. I mean, Hunter's indicated he's fighting soon. Also, Trevor Bryan indicated he's fighting soon. Both Hunter and Bryan haven't been up to much in terms of the opponent front recently. Hunter obviously fighting a scrub in Mike Wilson, brought an inactive cruiserweight who'd been out of the ring for 2 years, and somehow Wilson ended up getting ranked. So Demori, sort of the same boat, could happen. And Trevor Bryan, he really hasn't been up to much for years, so wouldn't be surprised if it's either of them. But potentially, maybe it's going to be someone else further down the top 15. Leonir Pero potentially could be him. Maybe they will look to Zan Kozabutsky, someone else. I don't know. Whatever. But the only real sort of difference in the rankings this month is Frank Sanchez. He drops out. He'd been sort of towards the back end at 12, and Filip Hrgović comes in. Hrgović just had a win. It was a tune-up against Marko Radonic. We knew it was going to be trash, and it was trash. Dropped him 5 times en route to a third-round stoppage. But Frank Sanchez, what's happening there? And this is interesting because a few months ago, F.I.A. Jugba, who'd been ranked by the WBA for some time, randomly he was just dropped out of the rankings. He'd been a similar sort of position, sort of 10 to 15 range, gone. Now Frank Sanchez, gone. So perhaps their fight, which is on October the 9th, they've just not decided to have any sort of sanctioning fees for the WBA, and the WBA has said, well, we'll see you later. Could be that simple. And the fact that both these guys were fighting each other in a couple of months apart, drop out of the rankings, it makes you wonder. Moving on to the ring. So I don't often cover the ring's top 10. It was really a top 11 because they have a champion, and you can see here it's Tyson Fury and Oleksandr Usyk. So he's moved up to the number 1 position, as it were. So he's up from, I think it was number 4 there or thereabouts. But most of the rest of the list is just sort of dropped a place or two because of Usyk getting inserted at the number 1 spot. You can see Anthony Joshua dropping down there to number 2. You've got Deontay Wilder behind him. Number 4, Dillian Whyte, Joseph Parker at 5, Andy Ruiz Jr. at 6. Number 7, Luis Ortiz. Number 8, Michael Hunter. Number 9, Oscar Rivas. And number 10, Joe Joyce. And some of these guys, and this is I was talking about this on Patreon some time ago, seems to be harder to work your way out of the ring rankings than it is to work your way into them. Because when you consider someone like Oscar Rivas hasn't had a meaningful win for 3 years? So he's been on the list in the top 10 there for 73 weeks. It makes you wonder because obviously his biggest fight in his career was 2019, and he lost to Dillian Whyte. He, at the start of 2019, beat Bryant Jennings. But apart from that, it's pretty thin on the ground for Oscar Rivas. I don't have him in my top 10, and I'm surprised on the back of inactivity, and he's not even fighting at heavyweight at the moment. He's going to be fighting for the inaugural Bridgerweight title. So does he really justify being in the top 10? And I would take that a step further because you've scrolled down to the bottom of their sort of page for the ring and their ratings policy. They say it's the most objective criterion and takes precedence over all others, which is results. So if that is the main criteria, results, how does that sort of mesh with hasn't been fighting? How can you have him there as a top 10 fighter and he's fighting at Bridgerweight and has had no notable wins and has been inactive for a couple of years? Tell me, explain. I just can't work that out. And also, similarly, Luis Ortiz, who since he got sparked out by Deontay Wilder at the end of 2019, has not been up to much. He had 1 round of action against Alexander Flores, who basically fell over in weird circumstances. We haven't sort of cited Luis Ortiz since. So if this is a results-based top 10, well, something's not adding up here. Is it just me? But anyway, on the Usyk thing, so not only has he climbed to number 1 in the ring's top 10 with Tyson Fury as the champion, so what they're saying is that Fury is the better heavyweight at this point, at least in their eyes, but also Oleksandr Usyk, and I'll go up to the top of this article because it has Usyk as number 2 pound for pound, and basically the rationale is that he's not number 1 is that he's just sort of a hair behind Canelo at this point. But in terms of the heavyweight stuff, so they've updated their bit here saying, lost in the great Usyk performances, that Joshua did have some good moments before faltering in the home stretch. Mulcahy said, so Usyk to number 1 for me, AJ just behind at number 2. Does Wilder have an argument to be number 2? Yes, he does, but I believe Wilder should have 2 losses on his resume as well, and I appreciate AJ not making excuses, saying he lost to the better man and not blaming anything and everyone around him. So if number 2 spot is evenly contested, I give it to him on that. And also factor in that AJ did adjust and avenge a loss, whereas I have yet to see that from Wilder. So Mulcahy, so one of their contributors. So anyway, the Ring ratings, Oleksandr Usyk rewarded by the Ring, and Boxer of the Month for the WBA. What do you make of it all? Drop a comment, loud and often, hit like, hit subscribe, follow me on Twitter, boxing_squared. I'm out.